Ever heard of chemical warfare in your own backyard? Look at this exam question. Scientists are investigating an invasive shrub called sumac that's attacking native marigolds using toxic root extracts. This biological weapon is called Allelopathy, where plants literally release biochemicals into the soil to poison their neighbors and crush the competition. Let's walk through section A and bank these 4 easy marks. Question part 1 asks us to identify the relationship between root length and extract concentration. If you look at the table, the control starts at 16.3 centimeters. As the chemical dose goes up, root length drops straight down to 14.2 centimeters. So your exact answer for the box is, as the concentration of sumac root extract increases, the root length of marigold decreases. That's a textbook negative correlation because the roots are taking a direct hit from the toxins. Tells us to compare and contrast how the extract affects plant height versus above ground biomass. Remember, you must give a similarity and a difference to get both marks. For your similarity, note that at the highest concentration of 10, both parameters are heavily reduced compared to their peak values. But for the difference, and here is the exam trick, at a low dose of 2.5, the height actually increases from 16.5 to 19.1 centimeters, while the biomass drops immediately without any initial increase. In biology, we call that height spike a biphasic effect. A low dose stimulates, but a high dose inhibits. Now finally, we go to question 3. Question 3 wants percentage change calculation for total biomass from the control to the maximum dose. The students always mix up the formula, but it's just new value minus old value divided by the old value times 100. Our new value is 18.3 and the old control is 25. 18.3 minus 25 gives us negative 6.7. Divide that by 25 and multiply by 100. And you get negative 26.8%. Write down minus 26.8% or a 26.8% decrease in the box for an easy final mark. IB Biology 2026, question 1. Let's move on to part B of this past paper question. Now, the scientists are looking below the surface at the soil microbes. They are measuring microbial activity after 5 days of exposure to that toxic sumac extract. Let's crush these next 3 marks instantly. Question B, number 1, is a direct data reading point. It asks you to identify the microbial activity and the concentration of 10. If you follow the 10 line straight up to the point and look across to the y-axis, it sits exactly one small square above 0.3. Each square is 0.02, so your exact answer for the box is 0.32 arbitrary units. Don't forget the units if they aren't provided on the line. Question B, number 2, wants us to describe the overall effect of the extract on these microbes for 2 marks. To get full marks here, you can't just say it goes down. You need to break the graph into its distinct phases. First, write that microbial activity decreases overall as extract concentration increases. That's your first mark. For your second mark, describe the shape of the line. Activity drops sharply from 0 to 2.5, plateaus or stays constant between 2.5 and 7.5, and then takes a final sharp plunge down to 10. Showing the examiner that you see the plateau is exactly how you secure both marks. Bonus tip for your next class discussion. Look at those massive error bars in the middle. They overlap significantly between 2.5 and 7.5, which proves that the microbial activity doesn't actually change during that plateau phase. Drop your questions below and make sure you follow for part 3 of this paper. Hey guys, we are still in question 1 from 2026 IB Biology SL. Let's wrap up the final part of this long response data question and secure those last 4 marks. The text tells us that the Simpson's reciprocal index was lower in soils treated with the sumac extract. Let's see how the IB wants us to tackle this. Question C asks us to outline the significance of a lower index in terms of soil microbial diversity. This is straight from the ecology unit of the syllabus. The Simpson's reciprocal index measures both species richness and evenness. So, your exact answer is a lower index indicates a decrease in microbial species diversity. It is a simple high-yield definition mark that you can bank in seconds. Now, look at the question D. This is a 3-mark discuss question evaluating the scientist's hypothesis. The hypothesis states that invasive success depends on releasing chemicals that either inhibit native growth or change plant-soil microbial interactions. To score full marks on an IB discussion question, you must give points that support the hypothesis and points that limit it. First, state the supporting evidence. The data supports the hypothesis because the extract clearly inhibits marigold growth, causing a major drop in root length and total biomass. It also changes soil interactions by significantly crushing microbial activity and lowering diversity. Next, you need to hit them with the counter argument to lock in that final mark. However, the data provides limitations. At the low concentrations of 2.5, marigold height is actually simulated, not inhibited. Plus, microbial activity plateaus completely between 2.5 and 7.5. Finally, there is no standard deviation provided to prove statistical significance. Break it down clearly into pro-hypothesis and anti-hypothesis points, and the examiner has no choice but to give you full marks. Drop a comment if this workflow helped you, and follow for the next past paper walkthrough. Alright, we are still in IB Biology 2026 May exam paper 2 SL. Question number 2, it says monosaccharides are essential molecules in the body. A. Outline one property of monosaccharides and its related function. Don't overcomplicate it. Just write property, soluble in water. Function, easily transported in the blood to where energy is needed. Now, part B. Look at this pyramid. Notice how the energy drops from 10,000 kilojoule to 1,000 kilojoule and down to just 1 kilojoule. That's the 10% rule in action. The question asks you to explain why this reduction happens for 3 marks. Here is exactly what the mark scheme. First, state the obvious. Only about 10% of energy is passed to the next level. Second, energy is lost at heat during cellular respiration. Remember, organisms use energy just to stay alive. Third, some energy is lost in unconsumed parts like bones or as undigested waste in feces.